This illegal end portal exists in vanilla, and here's how to get a working zipline survival. And these are 107 Minecraft things that feel illegal to watch. And hey, the YouTube genies let me know that the fastest anyone has ever subscribed to the channel is 2 seconds flat. So if you think you can do it faster, speedrun to that subscribe button down below. It's free and it helps out a ton. If we place our Eye of Ender right here in this end portal, it lights up, but not how you would expect it to. And the reason for this is because end portal frames have a direction to them. So if we face them all the right way, we're able to generate the end portal so that it actually spawns outside of the frame. And worth mentioning, this might be the reason why if you built an end portal in creative, it never actually lit up. You might have just placed the frames facing the wrong way. So take this as a lesson on how to fix that and how to break it at the same time. Here's how to make TNT completely safe. Since even though a prime TNT might explode like this regularly, if you were to ignite the TNT and then put it onto a half slab, then the amount of blocks that it actually blows up gets significantly smaller. In some cases, only the slab explodes, which is a lot better than the chain reaction we were looking at otherwise. So if you want to explosion-proof your base and you don't have obsidian, then this deal proves that you might be better half off. Thorn's armor still works even if you're not wearing it. As it turns out, all the game checks for is having it equipped, which means it still counts if you hold a piece of Thorn's armor in your offhand. But you do have to be holding it. It can't just be in your inventory, which is cool to know for a fun fact, but I think I'd rather wear the armor and then open up my hand slot. If you're tired of your cat sitting on your chest, then this cage might be the answer. Though that might sound a bit cruel. What's actually happening here is that if we use a piston just right, it's possible to push our pet cat inside of a root block like this. And then with a moss carpet over top so it can't jump out, we make sure our feline stays in timeout. But don't worry, because the blocks are transparent, it's never going to suffocate or take damage, making it slightly less cruel than it would have been. This pufferfish will never deflate, and the reason for that is this armor stand. See, if we put an item frame underneath a glass block and then waterlog this chest, then our pufferfish friend is able to breathe just fine, but that armor stand will always keep it a little bit on edge. But that gives us the perfect opportunity to have a fully puffed up pufferfish on display, which I've got to say is a lot more visually impressive than just having some guppy floating around your pool. Some people like sponge cake, but probably not like this. Though weird as it may seem, in Bedrock Edition, it's entirely possible to place your cake underneath the water source. And really, there's a whole slew of blocks that you can waterlog in Bedrock that we have no prayer of doing in Java. But if you're really hoping for some cake by the ocean, I guess this could be your opportunity. Watch this fish closely, because in Bedrock Edition, if you put a fish inside of a moving water source like this, then if it stays in the same place idle long enough, its swimming animation will infinitely speed up, until, as you can see, we get some pretty wild results. But it's worth mentioning that no matter how much speed it builds up, as soon as the fish actually moves a block, then its animation goes back to normal. So if you're trying to build up speed for 12 hours, you might want to look somewhere else. Why does the water flow this way? Well, weird as it may seem, it's not a glitch, it's actually possible with pistons. Simply build this shape using a piston and honey blocks, flow down the water, and then break the redstone so that the piston retracts. From that point, the water will still flow like this, and you can create some pretty wild shapes for your waterfalls. Just make sure you don't accidentally update it again, otherwise the whole thing will be a wash. This build is illegal, or at least it should be. When you consider the fact that carpets can only be placed above non-air blocks, and lanterns need to be supported either under or on something, then how exactly does this work? But as we see, the solution for doing this is that we build up a water tower, place a carpet over top, and then swim down so that we can place the lantern. From there, drain the water into a bucket, remove the blocks around you, and we'll be left with this monstrosity. But what I will say about this is that we now have a true definition of a symbiotic relationship, because really, you can't break either piece of this without the whole thing falling apart. I think that's kind of beautiful. Bedrock Edition is known for its fair share of bugs, and while some of those can be a pain, others are just cool to see. And this machine falls into that second category. As demonstrated, with the perfect mix of timing and silk touch, we can grab a fully functional portal block item, which is great, but I'll add a disclaimer to just how awkward this is to pull off. And even after building the system properly, it takes the right amount of lag and luck to make it happen. But after all that, it is a neat souvenir. In Bedrock Edition, if you were to get a baby drowned mob to wear a mob's head, then when it equips it, that head will look ginormous. And there you go, you've got your own kind of a bobblehead in your world. And honestly, I don't know if you'd classify this as more silly or terrifying. I feel like it fits for both. Anyone who played Minecraft in the past knows that boats used to be fragile little things, and you'd be lucky to get through a swamp without smashing it into planks and sticks. Nowadays, that's thankfully patched, but with a machine like so, we can remember those old days in somewhat of a strange way. With a wave machine like this, the force of the slime blocks will cause the boat's hitbox to launch up and then slowly maneuver back to the ground. And then, if we retract before impact, the boats will smash into pieces just like they used to. As we know, Endermen do their best to not get hit by arrows. And while that normally means teleporting away, if we set up a world like so, we can see something even more peculiar. After we break this block, you'll notice that the Enderman, with nowhere else to teleport, will just suspend the arrows above. Now, to clarify, presumably does still teleport teleport, but just quick enough to its one same block that it doesn't have the time for the arrows to hit. And whatever it is, it leaves us all with quite the sight to see. This so-called illegal trick has gained a fair amount of traction in the recent months, but for good reason. As you'll soon notice, the world border is an odd piece of code, meaning some strange things can occur when we use it. So while we can't stack up different slabs over here, put a piston next to the world's edge, and the possibility happens. Granted, it doesn't function like a true double slab block, but if you want a party trick to show your friends, this might be worth trying on the next Minecraft server. Clearly, plenty of amazing things can be built in Minecraft, and while the building community is able to pull off quite a lot, a diagonal house is a rare sight to see. And after seeing this example, that might be for good reason. I mean, sure, it's definitely possible, but I can't accurately describe just how uncomfortable this thing is to explore, and having to place your chests and utilities along the jagged edge is just an odd sight to see. So while a rhombus is always an option, I'd rather not live in a geometry problem. TNT, much like its creeper parent, is a reactive block, though it might not always make the most sense. As it's laid out here, it seems a bit confusing that the TNT ignites from any other kind of fire, but a campfire, not so much. I mean, these things are hot enough to light me on fire, so why not the literal gunpowder inside? Though I suppose we should be grateful, since this gives us one way to use TNT decoratively. But honestly, looking at this just feels wrong. Like at any moment, it'll update and go off. Now, saving yourself from a fall with a water bucket is nothing new. And if you ask me, it's been done to death. So how about we try to get a bit more creative for our MLG save and turn to potions instead? No joke, using something like a slow falling potion, we're capable to make a safe landing from a dangerous fall. And to pull this off, the technique isn't too different from what it is for the water bucket, since it all hinges on pressing right click at the right time. And if you do that, your legs will thank you. Now, whether you call this GIF or GIF, chances are we've all seen them. And while they're commonplace, in Minecraft, they're a lot more rare, which makes this item frame a real sight to see. Though what's crazier still is that this is all done without using any mods, meaning we can not only play these animations within our world, but we can also record some of our own as well. And while I wouldn't use this to record your next hardcore Let's Play, it's still an amazing feat of Minecraft engineering, and it offers up some hilarious gags as well. In the one block at a time April Fool's snapshot, we're able to pick up all kinds of blocks and entities, including our boats, which gives this hilarious sight of trying to keep your boat above water so that it doesn't get wet. After all, you just crafted it, why would you want it to get soggy? And with how many steps it takes to actually craft anything in this April Fool's snapshot, I don't blame you. It's a really hard process to get one of these. Fear of the dark is pretty common, and fear of the unknown is even scarier, which is why this might be such an ominous sight. See, here we have the illusion of emptiness made up from building 4 walls of unlit black concrete like so. And the result is something that looks a lot more like the void than the actual void in the game. And I think this perfectly goes to show that what you can't see is infinitely more spooky than what you can. So if you're looking for a new tunnel for your next haunted house, this might be the pick come Halloween. Keeping yourself safe is a top priority in Minecraft survival. I mean, some might even call it the top priority. But how you do that is a different story. So while shields like this definitely have their place, I'd venture this human shield is a lot more fun to use. See, with a simple setup, we can summon ourselves an immortal villager buddy to block any and all oncoming shots like so, letting us survive the night with ease, and leaving nary a scratch on our partner's outfit, which is a win-win if you ask me. In a game made of cubes, getting a convincing circle is a tough concept, but with a mix of cleverly placed stairs and blocks, we can start to get a pattern like this. And to go a step further, by using a mix of item frames and torches, we can use this command to place seemingly illegal decorations off of the grid. So while you might have to trust the process to pull this off, the end result is nothing short of mind-bending. And if anything, it's just weird to finally place torches on a stair block. It just doesn't look right. By this point, we've all seen the Easter egg for naming a mob Dinnerbone, but this time, instead of just turning the mob upside down, it also changed the gravity to boot, which is definitely a wild sight. And yet, it's also surprisingly simple to pull off. See, all that's happening here is that we have a repeating command block that constantly checks for any mobs named Dinnerbone, and then when it finds one, it applies the levitation effect, and poof, they're off just like that, giving us quite the harmless prank to use next time your friend's online. Over the years, Minecraft has steadily added new pets to choose from. While everyone else opts for a dog or maybe the new axolotl, what if you want something a bit more unique? Well, there is a solution, albeit a weird one. Now, of course, the main thing that you're looking for with a pet is loyalty. So why don't go straight to the source with a Loyalty 3 Trident? No kidding, what this thing lacks in pulse, it apparently makes up for in companionship. So simply throw the thing, fill up your inventory slots, and then you can watch it follow you around. Truth be told, villagers aren't exactly the most cooperative, and often it's a real pain to move these Squidwards around. So since we don't have an easy way to bait or lead them around, we'll have to resort to some form of mob rule. And by that I mean, if you tuck a villager within a herd of mobs like cows and sheep, then we can use their hitboxes to drag along the villager. And while this seems ridiculous, apparently it's just crazy enough to work, even when crossing bodies of water. So while I'd much rather just lead these folks around using emeralds, I guess this mob mentality will have to do the trick. Though just make sure not to get any villagers stuck in your pig pen. For a fairly standard house, this is one that we've got our eye on. Or more appropriately, it's got its eye on us. You see, when utilizing a bit of depth on the side of the roof and some black material here, something of a face starts to appear, which is quite a surprise for sure. And while you might not be able to see what's happening from the front, we can catch a bit of a smolder from the side. And even if that doesn't hold a candle to the rock himself, it could make for some pretty solid real estate. Figuring out how to start building your Minecraft dream home can be a real challenge, but when your house works like a fever dream, then that might be on the right track. At first glance, all that's visible is this tiny house, but on the inside, you'll see a much larger picture. You see, if we lay out the viewing angle just right from this entrance, we can give the illusion of a much larger house inside the little shack. And even if it becomes less convincing once we walk around, from the right view, it's still a real sight to see. So famously, Minecraft has had the ability to see yourself in third person. And while that F5 functionality is nice, it's not exactly comprehensive, meaning that certain angles are still off limits. But we might have a way to fix that. Because for whatever reason, if you want to see yourself fall into bed, all we need is a trap door to make it happen. Yeah, no joke. If we crawl into this and then fall asleep, we can see the player's body collapse into the bed like so, which almost looks like an intentional animation, even if it's just an illusion. Now, personally, I think ropes would be a great decoration to build with, but it seems Mojang disagrees, since we currently have no way to tie leads on fences without using mobs, so we'll have to get creative to use this detail. But fortunately, our new axolotl pals might just be the solution. See, by throwing one of these down next to your fence, tying it up, and then picking it back up in a water bucket, the end result will be a rope left on the fence like so. And for you building aficionados, I'm sure you can already think of ways to put that to use in your world. So while it's not an intentional feature yet, it's the closest we've got. Minecraft has its fair share of unstackable items, and while there's commands and mods that allow us to stack the unstackable, what if I told you there was a way to do this in vanilla? No joke, by using the grindstone, we can stack items that we wouldn't be able to otherwise. The way this works relies on using the disenchant feature on a couple of cursed books, and since these can't be unenchanted, the game will merge them like so. Is it practical? Not really, but the same could be said about the cursed books themselves, so it fits. Now, as far as Minecraft's concerned, circles are a rare sight, but once again, the community's found a way to make them happen. You see, when placing down glazed terracotta in a circle like so, and filling in the corners with diorite, we can see a perfect circle come out of the blend. And while it's an illusion that may take a second for you to see, if you squint, it becomes quickly noticeable. And that way we get both a circle and an abstract piece as well, which is a win for both if you ask me. A long-held fact in Minecraft is that the end and the nether do not mix. I mean, you can't make a nether portal in the end, so the two seem pretty exclusionary. That is, until we do something like this. If we go into the world files of the game and switch out the folder called dim1 for another world's file, we can actually swap out the dimensions for new ones, meaning we could have our nether be the end, or the overworld. And believe me, it's as confusing to pull off as it sounds, but it can also look quite cool. Minecraft doesn't have many boundaries set in place, but there are unspoken rules that we tend to follow, and that might be why when you do something like this, it just feels off. Truly, even the recipe book wants us to craft our things in the center, but nonetheless, it is possible to build along the sides of the crafting table. I mean, it's also possible to make a flint and steel like this, but if you ask me, it looks more like a steel and flint, proving that even when it works, it's still plenty awkward. After a while of playing with your friends, it can get tough to impress them, but building up a full netherite beacon should do the trick. Though getting all the netherite to make that happen is actually a tough hurdle to cross. So instead, what if we want to make this happen for a fraction of the price? Well, using this method, we can make it seem like we're the richest on the server, when in fact, we're barely cutting it. But hey, as long as they don't snoop around the other side, this should be fairly convincing, and that could earn us the respect that we're looking for. Despite their shortcomings, tridents are a lot of fun to use, and they're worth keeping on hand for the Riptide Elytra combo alone. But that's apparently not their only synergy. See, if we were to instead charge up our trident and then switch to a sword as we launch out, that momentum will transfer over and we'll get something of a sword charge attack. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that's incredibly cool. So if you're looking for a fire aspect trident, this might be the closest you're gonna get. Though I'd be remiss if I didn't warn that this method wears down the durability on both the trident and the sword. So grab an Unbreaking book before the trial run. As everyone knows, Endermen can tend to be a bit camera shy, meaning if we make eye contact, that whole operation goes belly up. But while that rule is true, there actually is an asterisk there. See, if we continue to look at the Enderman in question and lock eyes, then we enter something of a staring contest, which is useful, but the strangest piece of this whole thing is that after a certain amount of time, that Enderman just gives up. Just like that, the monster turns peaceful and leaves you be. But I'm not complaining. Adding a bit of color to your house can go a long way, and by that logic, this colorful contraption should help out a ton. Though as the title says in this post, it's maybe more fit for giving you a migraine than a masterpiece. Here, you'll notice that the player lined up have a 2-block hole with a full-scale build behind it, which is an odd sight for sure. And while it's easy to admire the skill put in, anyone can just as easily tell that this jar of jelly beans just doesn't match up. But hey, it's impressive nonetheless. Few things can stop a TNT explosion, but water is supposed to be the cure-all solution for that. Though while it works like this, over here, it's a bit lacking. And the reason for that is that if we happen to drop a falling sand entity into the same block as the TNT once it ignites, we can cause an explosion just about anywhere. And yes, that even includes underwater. And honestly, it seems like a solid choice to hunt for clay from your local lakes. But even if it's useful, I'll never be able to wrap my head around the physics here. Parkour is a pretty straightforward concept. You have a goal and you have to jump to get there. I mean, it's not rocket science. But to spice up that idea, we need to talk about parallel universes. Or more specifically, using command blocks to jump between two realities like so. See, as it's laid out, we not only have to make sure where we land our jump, but also switch to the right clock to make the blocks appear. And if you ask me, that really takes your jumping puzzle to another level, literally. The way that Minecraft is, it's really easy to build a pillar, but really awkward to build downwards. And without a water source to cling to, most of us might think that such a thing is impossible. But that's just not true. If we just so happen to have 2 trapdoors on hand, then we can use this crawl technique like so to slowly maneuver ourselves down the path. Is it tedious? Absolutely. But the fact still remains that if you need to build downwards in a pinch, this might be your best bet. As we've talked about in the past, campfires can have a chunk of benefits over their furnace counterparts. And while that's true, it can still be quite annoying for one of these to fizzle out. So whether it was your friend with a shovel or a rainstorm overhead, the fact still remains that we gotta reignite this thing. And while a flint and steel would be the obvious choice, we've actually got some much stranger options to use. See, in certain cases, it's possible to light the campfire using a fire aspect sword, a book, or even yourself to catch the flame. And I'll let you guess which one's the safer option. As the old saying goes, lightning never strikes twice. But in Minecraft, that couldn't be further from the truth, and this machine shows as much. See, thanks to the Caves and Cliffs update, we can use the way the Trident entity behaves and position it on top of a copper lightning rod to make a bolt of lightning every time that Trident falls. The result of which is something of our own lightning generator put to use. And the potential applications of this glitch could be wide-reaching. So whether that's changing a villager breeder into a witch farm, a pig pen into piglins, or making that red subscribe button gray, thank you, by the way, this machine has a lot of opportunities, and I can't wait to see them. Clearly, Steve and Alex are pretty strong. I mean, how else would they be able to carry around mass amounts of stone and food in their inventories? But while we're used to holding blocks and items, what if we tried to carry a mob instead? And no, I'm not talking about a parrot on your shoulder, but rather doing something like this. Because of the way that hitbox collisions work in Bedrock, we're able to carry mobs like Enderman up and down the ladders like so, which looks uncomfortable for the both of us, to say the least. Minecraft logic doesn't always make sense, and while that usually counts against us, sometimes it can work in our favor, and that'd be the case with these curved rails. Now, upon a first glance, these would seem highly impractical to build in your world, but place them side by side with powered rails, and you'll see this alternative win out and then some. And while the science here is too confusing to wrap my head around, the fact remains that creating this circle pattern can pay off in a big way. So if you find yourself wanting to make a roller coaster but your chests are empty on golden redstone, this cheaper option might be a solution. When you're first getting into the villager market, it can be a real leg up to convert them to zombies first. Because let me tell you, that discount for curing could be a huge help towards your emerald beacon. Though to convert every villager, you're probably doing a lot of brewing, a lot of which is unnecessary. Let me explain. See, if you were to take your weakness potion and instead add a dragon's breath, then we can use that now lingering potion to make 8 arrows of our own, which will let us convert substantially more villagers in the future. And hey, on Bedrock, the return is even better, since we could just make a whole stack of tipped arrows from one cauldron. Now, in a game made of blocks, a circle stands out. And while we could cheat and use shadows as an example, if we want something really cursed, we gotta turn to command blocks. With the right set of commands and NBT data, we can essentially paint a circle of entities like so. And as you can see from these examples, the results can get fairly crazy. Now, I should mention that this can also cause a bunch of lag, but that lower frame rate will just turn this into the perfect cursed slideshow. Now, while map art can do a lot of great things, animation isn't one of them. And usually to get that effect, we need to use some extensive command blocks or redstone to make it happen. But with this illusion, if you focus in on it, I'm sure you can notice that it's already in effect. What's happening here is that by trying to focus on the lines between the ovals, the image starts to look wavy, which is more than a little disorientating. But it could be a great piece for your art gallery, and as long as no one gets sick, it's well worth that. Minecraft physics clearly don't make a lot of sense, but that doesn't make a site like this any less strange. See, in vanilla Minecraft, it's entirely possible to put a lava source block on top of a water one. And how do we do this? Well, it all comes down to our old friend, the sign. See, if you waterlog a sign like so, then apparently it's so powerful that even by putting a lava block on top, it still holds steady. So if you want a particularly deadly aquarium for your house, I guess it is possible. Pets make for great companions, animals, and thankfully in Minecraft we're able to collect a few of our own. But keeping them alive is a different thing entirely, and more often than not, we just leave them at home to keep them safe. So to find that balance between safety and sidekick, Bedrock might have our solution. See, mobs over here behave pretty strangely when exposed to the right potions, meaning if we take a bunch of our pets, unload a ton of decay potions, and then heal them at the last moment, some will eventually enter into this bugged state, in which case isolate them and you've got yourself an immortal buddy. And sure, the methods might be questionable, but the results are hard to argue. The world border is a weird fixture in Minecraft, and while others have used it to create illegal double slab variants, I think we should just ditch the border entirely. And as so, to do our own attempt at a Wind Waker barrier skip, all we need is a boat and some persistence. By simply placing the boat halfway through the barrier, we can hop in and row ourselves right over to the outer limits. And then, stranger still might be that by going far enough, the boat can even break down into planks and sticks, just like it used to in the past. Now, thankfully, Java Minecraft doesn't have much for microtransactions, but that does leave us behind in terms of cosmetics. Or rather, it would if we didn't have this command. You see, with the /item replace command, we can put blocks and items on our armor slots that we couldn't normally. So, sure, Steve doesn't normally have a mohawk, but put an anvil on your helmet and the problem's solved. Or you can add an emerald to your head and look like a sim. Really, the possibilities here are quite open, so now it's all up to you to find your favorite one. Complex doors are a staple of the Redstone community, but while Mumbo can show you how to make 40 of those in a couple minutes, I bet you won't see one of these too often. And folks, your eyes don't deceive you. This is built entirely within vanilla Minecraft, albeit it did take the creator around 1200 command blocks to build, but the result of which is still pretty special. And honestly, I wouldn't even know where to start building one of these. But luckily, the smooth animation is something that we can all enjoy through the world download. If you look at a sheep, it doesn't seem like the smartest of mobs, but what if I told you that these things are actually masters of disguise? Or at least they will be. See, by setting up the command blocks that we have here, our sheep turn from mindless mobs into proper chameleons, being able to blend in with their surroundings like so. And while they probably don't run across colors this vibrant in the wild, it is still cool to see this effect in action. And honestly, it's a lot more unique than just yet another sheep named Jeb. Steve's addition to Smash Bros was a huge deal, and not just to see this character rise from a solo-made indie game into legend status, but also just to see how cool it'd be if minecarts worked like this instead of this. And since that reveal trailer, it's been not just a want, but a need to have this in the base game, and thankfully we have just that. With commands, we not only have a minecart that can place rails in front of it, but it'll also ride across water, lava, and even different dimensions, which is just insane. The community is always looking for ways to push Minecraft to its limits, and if you've played parkour, then you know that jumping is no exception, and that'd be how the Olympians of the game have found a vanilla way to clear 8 blocks with ease. And folks, it's all done without the speed effect. As you can see, if we build up the right amount of speed on this path, we can launch ourselves over the gap with no problem. So if you're looking for the gold medal in the long jump category, then maybe grab some ice and trap doors and you'll have that record locked down. Minecraft blocks come in one shape and size. That is, until today. See, by using distance and a clever stair-step-like build, we can make it seem as if the block that we placed is actually quite small. In this way, we practically guarantee that any visitors will be left with a question mark as to how it works. But besides a prank, you might actually find yourself using this on a larger scale. And really, we'll leave the finer details of that to you. But I will say, this could make for a real mind-bending entrance to your next base. Now, hitboxes in Minecraft are a funny thing, and while sure, there are plenty of glitches that manipulate this, we can also do some weird things in the base game. For example, let's take a look at crawling. However, the tunnel that we're using this time might be a bit more cramped than you're used to, but even then, we can surely crawl within the tiny space between these piston heads, which is cool, but really, I've got no practical reason on why to do this. And for your safety, I'd recommend getting out of there before someone flips the lever. When you see a grid like this, your first instinct is probably a game of chess or checkers, but that's not what we'll see today. But instead, if we strategically place our crafting tables, we can take after this user and make it seem like one is much bigger than the other, which seems like nonsense at first. But the way that we do this is that when you build these, the squares must be 2 by 2 for each one. And then that way, when one crafting table is placed on the ground, the other can be placed 4 blocks into the air and give us the illusion of size. Traversing the nether is a tricky business, and the open fields of lava don't make that any easier. So if a strider isn't your style, then this method is well worth a shot. See, as coded, we get something of a lava boat to use in the second dimension. And while it's ridiculous, it's hard to say that a Frostwalker boat wouldn't be cool to try. I mean, I'd even love to use that in the overworld, let alone the nether. And being able to drift to the nether fortress in style is a great addition, no doubt. The death and loading screens are a staple of Minecraft, and they're so commonplace that by this point, no one's surprised by them. But we can use that to our advantage. Taken after this user, we can make a giant version of the respawn screen in our creative world. And with the help of map art, we can make this even more convincing. Then, after we place these down at spawn, we can fool anyone who respawns into seeing yet another respawn screen when they least expect it, letting us watch from the sidelines and get quite the laugh while we're doing it. If you've played on Bedrock Edition, then you know that this version is full of some pretty wild stuff, and my favorite of which might just be this glitch. You see, while ziplines in Java normally require command blocks or mods, here, we're able to do it all with a glitch. As it is, if you start swimming in the water and then exit with a roof overhead, you can still glide along the blocks while swimming, meaning all we need is a few chains and a path to make a fully functional zipline, which I think is just awesome. Every now and then, Mojang puts their foot down on a certain feature, and among those, vertical slabs might be the most famous, which is their decision to make. But that doesn't stop us from having vertical slabs in vanilla. See, with the help of TNT and water like so, we can glitch out this wall so that we have our very own vertical slab of sorts. And folks, this even works for getting illegal glass pane and fence variants as well. So even if Mojang says no, with this glitch, the option's still on the table. Sometimes when you're fighting a creeper, it's just gonna explode, which is fine, accidents happen, but we all know that it's polite to fill in the newly created hole. Though while I'd assume that everyone reaches for grass or dirt to do this, it turns out that's just not the case. And I'm not trying to judge, but I'll say it definitely caught me off guard to see someone filling in with water, or even scaffolding in some cases. Which, sure, they're odd, but as long as no one leaves them hollow for monsters to spawn, I guess the rest is personal taste. A TNT explosion can pack quite a punch, but while that's already true, we can dial it up a notch. So what if instead of just destroying the blocks, it also launched the debris? Well, the results can get pretty ridiculous, and it makes blowing up your friend's base even more gratifying. So if you're looking to cause some proper chaos on the server, this is a solid option for sure. Just make sure your computer's strong enough to handle it. Otherwise, that house won't be the only thing that's going up in smoke. When you're exploring your world, nightfall is the most common hazard. And while a bed is a quick fix, the truth is that all it takes is one monster, and then it's a pain finding a place to sleep. So if you're in that situation, a simple fix is placing your bed underwater. Seriously, after you chuck it down on the lake bed, you can sleep just the same. That and the land dwellers up above shouldn't have much speed trying to chase you, letting you safely snooze down below. So assuming there are no drown nearby, that should go over pretty smoothly, allowing us to pass the time and avoid the now burning monsters up above. Though watch out for phantoms, because apparently those can go underwater, unfortunately. Building in Minecraft can be a rewarding task, but it also has its tedious parts. And while the fill command can help with that some, it's usually just good for filling in rectangles or cubes. Or so you thought, because apparently we can also use it for more complex patterns as well. As this Reddit user shows off, start by turning off the item drops and then fill from the second layer up with carpet. And then when you change that carpet back to your block of choice, you'll notice that the pattern only stayed where it was stacked, and the empty space is left that way. And while it's still a far cry from proper world edit tools in vanilla, this might save you some valuable time on the next project. Now, if you scroll through your YouTube recommended, you've likely seen this illusion show up in a thumbnail once or twice. So let's break down how it works. See, what's happening here is that if we place 3 sea lanterns like so in the corner of a room, it'll give the illusion of a weird rotating cube. And that's a strange sight from most any angle that you stare at it. But hey, now you know how it's done, and as long as your friends don't, this could still offer up a solid practical joke to put to use. Okay, so you've probably heard of the Headless Horseman, but what about the Bodiless Steve? See, after placing down some path blocks, we can throw a pig inside a minecart, hop on, and ride into the floor like so, with only our head to poke out of the top of the path, which can either startle your friends or lend to the weirdest game of soccer yet. And whichever option you choose, just make sure not to dismount the pig while you're down there. Otherwise, you'll go from an awkward situation into something a lot more uncomfortable. Over the years, Minecraft skeletons have seemed to get better at aiming, which is great for them and bad for us. So if you want to have an easier time dodging and look cool while doing it, then this is well worth a shot. See, with these command blocks, we can essentially rewrite how the arrows move, letting us get away scot-free and leaving the skeletons confused as to what happened. So for whatever reason you can't get a copy of Superhot on your device, now at least you got a solid demo to try out. Famously, water and lava don't mix, or at least not without making some cobblestone or obsidian in the process. There's actually a way to put both of these two together in harmony, and go figure, it's thanks to the Ollie-coated cauldron. Now, we've talked in the past about just how screwy this block is, and here it's no different. Since with the new lava cauldrons, we're fully capable to put these underwater like so and have a lava lamp in the deep blue, which is cool, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. As the classic saying goes, true love knows no bounds. And if you need any more proof, then there's actually an experiment that we could use within Minecraft. If we set up a mob on either side of this wall, then we can feed them as usual and get a baby just the same. Which I'm not gonna argue that makes any sense, but it's clearly possible. So if you're looking to create a tragic love story or next cow farm, then I guess this is a way to do that. Minecraft has blocks and it has mobs, and oftentimes you don't see the two sides mix, but that changes today. Since with the help of cleverly coded falling sand entities and armor stands, this Reddit user was capable of animating a proper functional jumping piston mob. And folks, this isn't done with any mods or resource source packs, but in fact, it's fully possible using just command blocks or data pack in vanilla, and the results are equal parts ridiculous and impressive to see. And honestly, this just feels like a Pixar reference waiting to happen. This is a weird one, since only recently did this fall out of favor, but as you can quickly tell after playing the 1.17 update, these ores drop an entirely different amount of items, and with the help of Fortune, we can beef up our returns significantly, which is great, but it does mean that if you're smelting your reserved iron and gold ore in a furnace, it just looks off. And this is definitely a way to see which of your friends is keeping up on the times. So to prevent any tragic loss of items, let's just add in the extra step. At first glance, this may seem like just any other house, maybe a bit on the smaller side, but otherwise nothing unusual. Though with a closer look, you can see that this isn't some bad texture pack, but rather it's a supersized scale model of the real thing. Let me explain. Here, the creator built it pixel by pixel to recreate each block type within the house, and then they copy and pasted their mega blocks to build something that looks like a regular house. And while using scaled blocks like this might be a tall order, it's definitely fun to see once it's all laid out. As the Minecraft genius Seth Bling shows, using a mixture of invisible shulkers and armor stands, we can create a fairly convincing 45-degree slope in our world. And while some of the blocks like diamond ore don't work quite right, it is still impressive to see just how much is possible here, even if it does feel illegal to watch. Clearly, command blocks are capable of some pretty wild things, but what this user pulls off feels like an act of science fiction. See, what's happening here is that the machine can scan the blocks within the area, assign them to a particle, and then recreate a copy down below. Meaning you only have to build one big statue and you get a little souvenir for the same effort. And even better, it'll even rotate for a proper display, which I've got to say is a lot more exciting than just another static statue. Let's face it, visiting the Nether is not a fun time. It's hot, it's ugly, and the locals aren't exactly friendly. So to get a taste of the second dimension from the comfort of the overworld, let's take after this. Here, instead of lighting the Nether portal, this user decided to make a picture frame out of it, which instead lends us a detailed depiction of the Nether out the back. And while it might be a bit disappointing once you step through, it's much safer than anything we'd see in the actual Nether. And thankfully so, might I add. Building a house is a tale as old as time in Minecraft, but having the game build house for you is a bit more exciting. That's why this display of a house built entirely of falling blocks is so wild to see. What's happening here is that we have a command block array perfectly timed to launch each and every block into its respective place, until it finally gives us our finished result. And full disclosure, for this to work, you will need a flat surface. Otherwise, those building blocks will just collide with one another and fall right off course. When I mention water travel, you're maybe thinking of something like this, or this, but probably not this. Which is unfortunate, because it turns out that minecarts can be surprisingly fun to ride over the river. If you line the underbelly of a nearby lake with soul sand, then the bubbles provide a powerful enough stream to float our cart across. And hey, if you play on Bedrock, these bubbles don't break your momentum, meaning we can make a pretty fun roller coaster to ride through the roaring tides. So next time you're crafting, maybe switch out those 5 planks for some iron instead. If we take an elytra and some well-timed bounces, it's possible to supercharge our jump height. And while we only got a 4.5 blocks in our testing, some players report a potential 5.5 blocks and beyond if you nail the technique, which is just crazy to see. If you've been to the end, you've surely come across this little guy, better known as the Shulker. But while we're all familiar with them, you maybe haven't seen one like this. As it turns out, even though we commonly see them in their purple hue, Shulkers can be dyed along the full spectrum of colors. Now, in Java, the way that we do this is by using the scoreboard commands and changing their teams, but in Bedrock, it's actually as simple as splashing them with a fistful of dye. And then there you have it, the change is made. If you've been around for a while, you've probably seen this trick done once before. That is, if you ignite a set of TNT like so, it ignites into a heart-shaped pattern that you see here. But the dirty little secret is that this only works on Bedrock, or at least, it used to. But with the help of specific command blocks, we can make this trick work in Java as well. And might I add, it looks a lot more cutesy with the new method as well, which is a nice touch for sure. With the new update comes a bunch of untested territory, and the Caves and Cliffs expansion is no different. So that's why I, along with many others, were surprised to see this Reddit user point out just how dripstone can shatter into pieces when it's exploded. For one, I'm amazed it doesn't break into items on the spot, but then to see it split up like this is even stranger. And apparently it's because each piece isn't actually connected, but they just fall close enough to look like one straight thing. Though regardless of that reason, it's still strange to see. Lava doesn't leave much for visibility, and while a fire resistance potion helps a bit, the problem still persists. So instead, we'll have to look elsewhere. And apparently, chains offer an elegant solution. Using these in certain versions, we can place them horizontally and get a shot of the blocks below. So if you're fresh off raiding a bastion and want to excavate a nearby lava lake, then it seemed that you're all set. And while I'm more accustomed to using the slab, if you don't have a potion, this oddball pick might be the best bet. To many in the community, the Aether Portal is something of a white whale to see, and I'm sure many of us were disappointed to see it fail like this when we tried. But with Bedrock, we might have ourselves a solution, or at the very least, a workaround. Apparently, when utilizing waterlogged stairs and blocks like so, we can strategically set up some floating water inside the glowstone frame. And then, even after we break the pistons and stairs, the water will remain inside our new Aether Portal. Just remember, it'll disappear once you reload the world. Minecraft's a sandbox game, there's no doubt about that, but that doesn't stop the game from setting some ground rules. And one that we're all familiar with is the ability to only place blocks on the grid, which is why a site like this is probably quite the surprise. Now folks, this isn't vanilla, but the execution's a bit sneaky. See, what's actually happening is that we have stair blocks aligned like so to give the illusion that the blocks are off the grid, and then we pour water over the nearby slabs to better cover up our tracks. And while the surprise might wear off after hearing that explanation, I still think this will be plenty cool for your next world. When you build something cool in Minecraft, you might need the right angle to show it off. And despite what it says, the built-in cinematic camera doesn't always cut it. So instead, why don't we take after modern cinematographers and use a drone shot instead? Now obviously you're not flying something like this in a Minecraft world, but with a pair of wings and a slow falling potion, we can actually get some pretty smooth shots. So if your build requires something a little bit more than a standard walk around, this might be the best way to show it off to your friends. Getting the different music discs in Minecraft is a risky business, and it's especially difficult to lock down a whole set, though one little step like this makes it so much simpler. Now it's true that the game requires a skeleton to kill a creeper for the disc to drop, but what isn't mentioned is that this even works if the cause of death is indirect. So if we follow what this user did and place a skeleton with lava in front of it, we can use its now fire arrows to trigger TNT blocks and do a massive explosion on the creepers below. So while it might take some time to trap all the creepers and line up the skeleton shot, the results are hard to argue. Ladders clearly have their place in Minecraft building, but that doesn't mean they always fit in, and I often find that wooden texture is a clash to what I'm building. So to solve that, vines are a solid alternative, though not like this, but rather like this. See, because vines operate off of a different collision system than the ladders, we can lay out our item frames in the same space, and using those, that'll let us use map art to create invisible ladders. And from there, it's all up to you what you choose for an aesthetic, since these designs can get real open-ended. And while this answer might be more tedious than crafting some ladders, that extra effort can clearly pay off. Let's face it, minecart roller coasters are fun, and while you and I know that, it turns out that we're not the only ones. Apparently, though it may seem odd, we're able to put any non-boss mob inside of a minecart. That's right, regardless of their hitboxes over here, we can still manage to fit their hands, arms, feet, and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. And with some of those, that just looks ridiculous. So whether you're building a gas pusher for your farm, or catching fish out of the lake, it's entirely possible. If you're falling from a great height, water's the all-star pick for safety, and we can use that idea to our favor. See, if you're looking to get even with someone on the server, this water illusion is a solid candidate to do so. As you'll notice, by making several custom maps with a water design like so, we can make a convincing spot for them to land on. Only once they aim for that puddle, they'll just break their legs on a couple of item frames, and that should be a rude awakening for sure. Walking through walls sounds like quite the superpower to have, but doing that without glitches should be impossible, or it was until this user's discovery. See, by using these immersive portals, we can give off the illusion of walking through a solid mirror. And while pulling this off might require some prior knowledge of the mod in question, as long as you light the portal properly and add in the glass, we can still walk through as planned, letting you trade places with yourself and likely leave a group of confused bystanders when you do, which is well worth trying out, trust me. Killing the Ender Dragon is a rite of passage, and while it's a feat to slay the beast in any amount of time, it's obviously impressive to speedrun the fight as well, which is probably why so many of us have brought beds to the end to do just that. But were you aware of just how fast this strategy allows for? Because if you're willing to learn the time and precision for placing the beds just right, it's possible to kill the dragon in just one perch. And folks, that's insane, so if you can do it, you have every right to be proud of yourself. Minecraft's wolves have a very iconic look, and I would hope so since we only have the one breed to choose from, but if you find yourself in a position where you're looking for a change, this might have you covered. See, while we can't have different breeds, we can have different colors. In Bedrock Edition, it's possible to spawn a glitched out red wolf like so by using the tag onTame in the summon command, which is cool, but we can push it even further. See, if you then dye it a different color, the whole thing changes. And hey, the same thing happens with the subscribe button, meaning we can get a veritable rainbow of dogs to show off in our world. And it only makes me sad this doesn't happen in Java. Sometimes when you're fighting a creeper, it's bound to explode, which is fine, accidents happen, but it's no treat having to fill in the newly exposed creeper hole by yourself. So instead, wouldn't it be nice if the world just did it for you? Well, that's not as crazy as it sounds. See, the idea here is that any creeper explosion is fully repaired like so, even including chests filled with items, which in my eyes is a lot more interesting than just setting the mob griefing game rule to false. And it definitely looks cooler. Every now and then, you've got to break the laws of physics. And while Minecraft doesn't exactly abide by gravity, that doesn't mean we can't break its own rules too. And one of my favorite ways to do that might just be these so-called illegal water and lava source blocks. After laying out the proper arrangement of sticky pistons and redstone, we can just about glitch out the game. And then, even after removing the surrounding blocks, we can still interact with these as normal source blocks. So if you're looking for a floating art piece to put in your base, this might do the trick. When you're playing in PvP, sometimes the retreat is just as important as the attack. But without turning around, it's hard to get much speed on that escape. Though, that could all change with the right key presses. As it is in Bedrock Edition, if you sprint forward and then backpedal while still holding down the sprint button, we can move with the same speed going the other way. And hey, we can even still jump and attack while we're backing up, making this pretty well equipped for combat. And it's definitely worth a try during your next 1v1. Pillagers are not the most pleasant to be around, and usually we try to keep these raiders as far from our villagers as possible. But all it takes is one boat and we can turn that around. See, we've talked in the past that it's possible to shatter the pillager's trusty crossbow, but while we used to do this with a shield, this option is much simpler. If you simply maneuver a pillager into the back seat and then sit in the front like so, then after killing some time, eventually the crossbow will break and that mob will be disarmed. As is, because the arrows can't hit us, we're able to wear down its durability without having to lose any of our own. And I think that's just great. Pranking your friends is a rite of passage on a multiplayer server. And hey, we're plenty guilty of that as well. So to give them a run for their money, why don't we hit them where it hurts? Their diamonds. See, by using a few item frames and map art, we can create a pretty convincing diamond ore. Or at least convincing from this side, since when you walk around to the other end, it's proven fake. And by that logic, we can make just about any decoy block in the game that we dream of, which offers quite the surprise if you ask me. Mirrors are something that we still haven't seen added to the base game. And while we could use a mod, there's another solution in vanilla. See, as this user shows, if we make a mirrored version of our build like so, and then place glass in the middle, between the two, we get that mirror effect that we wanted, which is cool to see, even if it does take double the time to build. Though if you have world edit commands, those might help to speed this up. But even if it is a burden to make, the results won't go underappreciated. Now, let me ask, what looks wrong with this scene? Not much, right? I mean, it's just a run-of-the-mill Minecraft landscape, which is true, but the full story here is that this shot is taken from hundreds of blocks away, and that to me is absurd. But sure enough, mixing together slowness, low FOV, a spyglass, and your fair share of zoom mods, we can get a real close-up to some faraway places. So if you've ever wanted to keep tabs on everyone living on the server, I guess this got you covered. Building a golem is a simple process, and I'm sure we've all taken the time to hire some help at some point or another. And with that being the case, I'm sure looking at this seems pretty nonsensical, but as the game is coded, it's possible to build the required formation without actually spawning the mob. Simply place the blocks out of order and the spawn is cancelled, which I must say, it cracks me up that even Mojang didn't consider that people would build it this way. And that assumption of theirs means that this is here to stay. If you've ever felt like someone's watching you, then you know it's a creepy concept. And this example should bring out those same feelings. See, as you move around the head, the eyes will track you like so, or at least that's what you'd think. Because with some extra depth, the redstone can move along the black background for a scary sight. And we can see something similar with this Guardian statue, except here, it's made using a tunnel and map art. But even when you do know how they work, it's hard to say they're not effective, or at the very least, unsettling. Bedrock is famous for being Minecraft's unbreakable block, but in this version, there's one that's even stronger. If we fill a cauldron up with snow and then right-click it again, the overflow will break through whatever is above. And folks, I mean whatever is above. Whether that's bedrock, portals, or just about anything in between, the powdered snow will smash it just the same, which makes this by far the easiest way to break bedrock. And if only we could build up on the nether roof in this version. Now, I'm usually not a big fan of heights, but this seems too good to pass up on. If you were to look down from this angle, you'd notice quite the view down below, but it turns out that's just another fake. And rather, this user took the time to fill out multiple maps of the surrounding area and then stitch them together to make this, which makes for a much cooler floor than what we're used to. And that way, even if it looks like we're way up in the clouds, we can still experience it all from the comfort of the ground floor. Living in a desert has its benefits, but lush greens just aren't one of them. And seeing as leaves we bring here will desaturate to the biome's color map, our garden looks a little bland, or it would be if it weren't for azaleas. See, when we shear the leaves off an azalea tree and place them down in another biome, they don't change color with the location, meaning we can have the illusion of fresh trees grown right out in the desert. And while your friends wonder why their oak trees look worse than yours, we'll have quite the oasis to see. Most of us are familiar with the Return to Sender achievement that you get from deflecting a fireball at a ghast, which is impressive, but I bet this is even harder to pull off. As you'll notice, Bedrock's llamas shoot their spit a bit differently than Java, meaning we're able to deflect the projectile with a random weapon, and that even includes our fists in some cases. So while I don't recommend angering llamas in the first place, if you do, then it is possible, albeit cursed, to whack a llama's spit right back with a direct hit. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?